Hey everybody, Jason Sherman here in Zero to CEO. In today's episode, I have with me Jonathan Baktari MD about the top 10 mistakes CEOs make. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. What an honor.
Yeah, man, and there is no CEO school per se, as you mentioned, but people make a lot of predictable mistakes, and a lot of these mistakes, you can avoid a lot of these mistakes, and we're going to talk about that today. So tell me, I know there's a lot of mistakes, but what's the number one mistake that CEOs typically make when running a business?
Yeah, I think the number one mistake is they think if they have the right business, by definition, it will succeed. Get the right product, get the right service, it's the right thing, but the actual execution, the hiring, the enrolling people into your vision, all of that is something you need to learn, and you can either learn it the easy way or the hard way. I think most of us who navigated it made a lot of mistakes, and we figured it out, hopefully. But ideally, it would be best if you didn't figure it out by making mistakes, but just to get the heads up and know ahead of time that there are certain things you have to do to make your business successful. Even if you have a great idea, even if you have a great product, you have to execute.
So a lot of people think that, their billion-dollar idea is the make it or break it for them. Why is that not the case?
Well, without the execution, without having a great team, mistakes can be made that can be fatal. I mean, you can die by 1,000 cuts. If you don't have your systems in place,
what kind of systems?
Well, I mean, first of all, you got to look. What depends if you're a service or if you're a product. But first of all, you have to identify initially 3, 4, 5 people who are enrolled in your vision, who don't feel it's a job that they're gonna, like go to the moon with you, kind of thing. And
I mean, how do you find those people though? Because I mean, there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there that they struggle to find those people, especially in the new way the world works digitally.
Right, exactly. Well, that's a whole separate question about hiring and mentoring and enrolling people in your vision.
Okay.
But those are all skill sets you need to acquire. But I think the biggest mistake you can make is just assume that your great idea will work without you identifying key leaders in your organization, because you can't do everything. LeBron James single-handedly cannot win the championship.
He needs a whole team.
He needs a team, and so I think that's the most common. But we have more. But I think those are some of the more common ones.
I mean, is culture something to do with this? I mean, you have a great idea, but then you have a company culture associated with your vision that people should also be on board. How do you let people know what that culture is and get them to come on board with it?
Yeah, well, the main thing is, of course, they're going to look at you. So if you are treating it as a side hustle, or you are, kind of, hoping it works out, what I have seen is the people who tell their staff and everyone they're enrolling into that failure is not an option, that we are going to will this through because we have this great idea and it's just a matter of executing. You have to communicate that to everybody on board and say, by the way, that's what I'm going to be expecting from you, that, we don't have a plan B, right? And I think
it's plan A only.
It's only plan A. So the more you come across as not having a plan B, I mean, and it's got to be the right thing. One of my first mistakes I was picking the right business. So you got to pick the right business. It's got to make sense. But after you've done that, then you can look at things that like really conveying that you're either going to the moon or not. I mean, there's no halfway in between.
Right, it's just empty space, and you're just floating around.
Right, it's a very good take on that. Yeah,
you don't want that. So we did mention hiring a little bit, and I've noticed personally hiring people for my own startup or businesses in the past couple of years has changed, because it used to be networking events, it used to be college fairs, it used to be all these things in person, and now I'm using things like Indeed or Handshake or whatnot to have 15-minute Zooms with people to figure out who's going to be good for the business. But that's difficult to do without seeing what they're made of. So are there any tips you can tell us about how to hire in this new paradigm shift that we have?
Right. Well, it depends what you're hiring for. So, if you have a factory or you have a, coffee shop and you just need, 5, 10 people to clock in and out, do a good job, don't piss anyone off, but do a good job. That's a different type of interview than you're trying to interview for some key people
Right.
that hopefully will be. So, yes, if you're just trying to find a cog in the wheel who needs to come in and, just bang out some work, that's not as complicated.
Right.
The standard interview does that. The the things that um, the people who are going to be real leaders in your organizations. One of the things we do, I mean, it's multifaceted, is with every application we ask them about what I call deal killer questions.
Ooh.
Maybe 5 or 10 what I call deal killer. Those are the questions that if you found out the answer during the interview, you'd want to end the interview right away. We don't anyway because we can't say, oh well, that was the wrong answer. But for example, let's just say that working at your desktop and laptop and be on a computer all day is very important, and your typing speed is very important. So obviously, if you don't want to find out during the interview the person types 10 words per minute, right? Because then you're like, okay, well, we got to end this conversation. So whether how fast they type, whether they're familiar with a certain software, if there is some information that you would find out during the interview that would
Right.
make you want to stop the interview, ask those questions before the application comes in. So one of the things we say is please answer these questions to complete your application.
Got
And
it.
then you go through these deal killer questions. Let's say they live 40 miles away and they say, "Oh, I don't mind commuting." Yes, maybe they don't mind commuting, but probably not for 10 years. So and
Right.
you and you're looking for someone that's going to be there for 10 years. So, you can look at that and say, okay, this is a great applicant, but the person lives 40 miles away. And yeah, they don't mind, being in a car for an hour both ways every day, but that's going to get old.
Yeah.
Uh,
They're going
and
to
so,
eventually resent the job.
oh yeah, or find something closer. So find all your deal killer questions, them in, go through them. Don't ask questions that you can ask during the interview, which doesn't really, it's not like it's gonna kill the interview. Those can wait, but the ones that for sure will kill the interview, ask up front.
Beforehand. That makes a lot of sense. Kind of getting things out of the way helps you weed out the results. You mentioned leveraging technology a bit too, and I mean nowadays there are obviously tons of different technological advances that people have been using. What are some of the ones that you think are best suited for people to not make as many mistakes in their business?
Well, one thing we found is that anything that's repetitive or task oriented, if there's any way we can leverage technology to get rid of that. So at the end of the day, you want your staff to work on mission critical things or consumer facing things or client facing things, and
Makes
figuring
sense.
out inventory or balancing things in the office. While important, if there are either third party softwares or technologies you can develop where you can skip some of that. Anything that reduces friction for your staff or reduces friction for your clients is going to make you have more time to focus on what's really important.
Is some of that have to do with, I guess, using artificial intelligence and machine learning as well?
Well, on the basic level, it doesn't have to be that complicated. You just look at your operations and what things are repetitive and really doesn't require any critical thinking.
Okay.
Right. So, I get the AI stuff, but for this kind of stuff, meaning getting rid of repetitive or things that don't impact your bottom line activity, if there's a way to automate that or use technology, that's going to be a win for you because every staff has only a certain number of hours in the day.
Yeah.
And every hour you take away from doing something that's not contributing to client retention, promotion, product servicing, is a loss. So if there's a way to automate that or get some third party person or technology to do it, that's the best.
Yeah, and that makes sense for some tasks, but I would think, in particular, product development, project management. There's some things that require more thinking, critical
Right.
creativity, managerial skills. Like, how do you avoid making mistakes in product development? Because that's a big one.
Well, first of all, to kind of answer the past thing, if you get rid of all the fiction, they can focus more on the stuff that you were talking about because we want to free them up for the creative,
Right.
critical thinking stuff. So that's really number one. I think we found in our organization is that the same mistakes tend to happen over and over, just a year apart or 16 months apart, or when the new staff comes in and
Jesus
literally
Christ.
the same mistake. You're like, oh yeah, this happened a year and a half ago.
Uh,
Yeah, you're smiling. I guess
I'm
that's
also going,
yeah,
ugh.
yeah. Because that seems to be hitting home with you. But so one of the things we do is every time an error occurs, we write a policy on it.
Hmm.
And the reason why is if it's a natural mistake that anyone would probably make if they're new to that job or whatever. So we try to institutionalize all our previous errors into a form of policy. And then we have everyone read the policies online. And every month they go and just check off that they reviewed all the policies because it's the repetitive nature of the mistakes that's the killer. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think most of us could live, okay, I get that. Yeah, maybe we shouldn't have sent that off to the client, or maybe we should have handled
Crap.
that request differently. But then moving forward, the new policy is if anyone ever calls and says, they want to add on a service, like I'll give you an example. Sometimes a client will call and they want to add on a service, and it's a new staff, and they're like, oh, no, we don't have that service. When in fact
Hmm.
we do. So, of course, we wrote a policy. You can never tell a client we don't have a service. Okay, so all you can say is, you know what? That's a very good question. Let me get back to you. I'm going to research that and get back to you, as opposed to because we have that happen so many times where a client would call, say, can you do this? Do you have this service? And someone didn't know because we don't do it that often. Like,
Right.
no, we don't do it, and boom, we lost the client.
Ugh.
So that's just an example. You can't just say, okay, I'm going to tell everybody in the organization not to do that because it could happen a year and a half later.
Right.
So to take every mistake you make and create some sort of policy, and then it's not good enough to have the policy buried, in a three-ring binder somewhere in the
Right.
corner
It has to be visible.
because it has to be visible online, and we have everyone read the policies
Like once
every
a
month,
month. Okay.
once a month, once a quarter, depending on the level of the policies. But yeah, because some of those policies cover errors that have been made that really had a negative impact often, and sometimes it's a negative impact not just on finance, it's on quality, on customer satisfaction. So it's not all money, money, money. You want to take great care of your staff and your customers and clients.
I found myself, every time something like this happened in our organization, I found myself creating a bullet list and then pinning it to the Slack channel where the people were that were making the mistakes. And then I said, so every time you're going to do one of these content things or, documents or whatever, read the pin.
Right.
Read the pin, read the pin,
Right.
read the pin.
Right. But then you got new staff a year and a half later, and I mean, yeah, it's a challenge.
It is.
Whether it's the pin, but the policy thing, I think, has really made a massive difference since we implemented it.
Is it more like a document, like a PDF or something that you create that has a structure to it, and then you hand it
Yeah,
out or email it out
yeah.
or whatnot?
Originally, that's how we did it. It was like a PDF that people could just read, but we signed up with a third party that actually stores it,
Okay.
and I can share that software with you. A third party software where your staff can go in, sign in, and then check in.
Got it.
We have other things on that platform too. We have our learning management programs on there. We have our policies. So it's a platform you can use to store a lot of your activities for your staff.
Makes a lot of sense. All right, and to close things out, let's talk about understanding your competition a bit before you tell me how people can find you online and learn more about your services.
Understand. Say again about the
Understanding your
competition.
competition. So like, like how can you learn from your competition's mistakes, I guess
Right.
is the best way to look at it.
Yeah. The first thing I would say is, spend a lot of time going to your competition and just vetting them out as a client. It's something I think a lot of people don't do, but I think, and there's a second reason for that. I mean, you have to go to your client, to your competitors, and try to get their services, buy their product, go through their whole process, and see what that's like. And one of the things you'll find also, the best sales tactic often is when someone says, "Hey, I want to check out your competition," in response to you doing a pitch, is saying, "Well, listen, I totally understand that you want to check them out. Would you mind, I know the industry pretty well. I know them pretty well. Would you mind if I share with you something about them? And then so you know what to expect when you get there?" Goes, yeah, yeah, sure. Well, you know what? They're a great company, but they'll sell you the same product we do, but
Hmm.
they won't service it. So just so you know, we also service it as well as sell it to you. Yeah, go ahead and check them out, but I can already tell you that's going to be, the difference.
Right.
So often when you check out your competition, you then can find out what they do differently, and then that can be part of your pitch to current customers.
Makes
And
sense.
it doesn't have to be, exaggeration. Just be honest. Like, one nice thing is we're open on the weekends, they're not. One nice thing is, we have someone on call 24 hours a day and they don't.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, you can leverage that.
Perfect. And where can people find out more about your business and your services?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm on LinkedIn at Baktari MD. Also, I have a website, baktarimd.com, as well as e7health.com is our company that they can check out. You can also get us on pretty much on Baktari MD on Twitter, on all the major social media at Baktari, Baktari MD. And also, we have a podcast too on YouTube, Baktari MD.
Perfect. Thank you. And as always, hope you learned something, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.